ESPN drops their brand new pound for pound rankings, and they keep Terence Crawford ahead of Canelo Alvarez. So we're going to talk about that. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Let's jump right into it. ESPN, you guys see, they've updated their pound for pound list. They clout chased Canelo and put a picture of him who just fought. Oh yeah, by the way, happy Christmas if you celebrate Christmas Eve. But back to this graphic. So this graphic, they used a picture of Canelo and his likeness, but even after his dominant performance over Callum Smith, they still have Terence Crawford number 1, Canelo number 2, number 3 Inoue, 4 Errol Spence, 5 Teofimo, 6 Tyson Fury, 7 Vasyl Lomachenko, 8 Usyk, 9 Juan Francisco Estrada, and then they have a tied Golovkin and Tank Davis. First of all, why is Tank tied with Golovkin? Tank just knocked out a person that is undefeated and has been looking good in every fight. Triple G, he looked good in his last fight, but the guy had 5 knockouts. So of course he was gonna look good. Imagine putting Gervonta Davis in there with somebody who's a unknown commodity, unheralded, a non-known threat, and he only has 5 knockouts. Tank Davis, an African-American fighter, would be ridiculed for that by the media and the fans. Moving on, Tyson Fury, I think he cheated, so I wouldn't put him on the list. But the title of this video, Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez. Now, I will say this, it's harder to have a pound for pound list. You guys know if you follow my channel for any length of time, that I don't even really I don't write like pound for pound lists and stuff. I don't make my own. You know, I kind of just let that lane for other people because it would always be changing and it's all subjective anyway. But I told you guys I had Canelo Alvarez at number 1. I think he's done enough. His resume speaks for itself. And the reason why I had Terence Crawford at the number 1 pound for pound spot, but the reason why I'm deciding to replace him with Canelo Alvarez is the overall body of work. Canelo Alvarez still, we know the games and the strategy he's employing with certain opponents, but he's an A side, so he's still getting the opponents that he needs to keep him at the list or atop of the list. Versus Terence Crawford, most of his better work, like being the best in the division and stuff, was at 35 and 40. So it's hard for me to put him above Canelo when Canelo keeps showing up, keeps making, fights look easy. They're bigger names, and he's like even the Kovalev fight. To me, there was something up with the Kovalev fight, but he still moved up and took the threat. Crawford, it's not like he moved up to 54 or something. So you got to put Canelo. To me, I think it's a no-brainer to have Canelo number 1 right now. I will say it's harder than when Mayweather was around. When Mayweather was around, it was like undoubtedly you got to put Floyd at number 1. But right now, I would say the pound for pound list is a lot more subjective. Different people are going to feel a different type of way. Me personally, I put Canelo. I think his body of work speaks for itself. He got 50 plus fights. He's been looking good in fights. Even to Callum Smith, I don't think he was the number 1 person at super middleweight, but I did rate him. Even though he's coming off a bad performance by John Ryder, I do rate him. And he had some attributes like power and the 7-inch reach advantage, and none of that showed up. Canelo looked extremely good in that fight. He looked real good, real sharp, real good. And it's not just that Canelo beat him, it's how he beat him. He beat his ass. Like, I knew Canelo was going to win that fight, just from my taste, but I'm pretty good with the predictions by and large. But it's how Canelo did. He didn't get tired. His defense was on point. He had a great game plan, and the rest is history. Now, ESPN, they also wrote an article. It says, pound for pound rankings. Did Canelo jump Terence Crawford after the latest win? The answer is no. They kept him up there. People like Teddy Atlas, he says, and I quote, and this doesn't make sense to me. He says, I'm not going to move a guy who beat someone who he was supposed to beat. A guy who was exposed, Teddy Atlas says. He's going to stay right where he belongs. Crawford hasn't done anything to lose his position. So this is coming from Teddy Atlas, the same man who told Terence Crawford a few years ago when Lomachenko was 8-1 in front of Terence Crawford after he just knocked out Julius Indongo. I was at the fight. I was 5 feet away from them, and I have it in my cell phone, on my iPhone. Teddy Atlas told Terence Crawford and Andre Ward, who was active at the time, after he had beat Kovalev, Teddy Atlas said to their face that they are not pound for pound number one. Lomachenko is. Look, made it my top of the world. Teddy Atlas, quote, Vasyl Lomachenko number one pound for pound over Andre Ward and Crawford. November 30th, 2019, your boy Boxingego. So I made a video about this. This is the face that they made when Teddy Atlas was explaining his side. So it's just ironic and funny to hear Teddy Atlas now, on the Crawford bandwagon and saying Crawford's the best, but you told him after he knocked out Julius Indongo in 3 rounds in a spectacular, victory to become undisputed, you told him to his face and Andre Ward that they weren't the top guys. But again, Lomachenko, look at his record. He was 9-1 at the time. Lomachenko was 9-1, and you put him at number 1 spot and put Andre Ward at 2 and then Crawford at 3. Years later, Teddy Atlas is top 5 pound for pound. He's saying that Canelo is not number 1 despite what he's doing. Again, for me, I had Terence Crawford number 1, but the thing is, with the pound for pound list, it's gonna always be changing unless there's a Floyd Mayweather or Andre Ward that is such a dominant force and continues to show up and continues to fight relevant and dope competition. The reason why I took Terence Crawford, he's still undefeated, right? He's still a great fighter. He's still a technician and a highly skilled competitive athlete. So I still have him on the pound for pound list, of course. But the reason why I decided to move Canelo on the proverbial pound for pound list is because Canelo, at the very least, even with the games and the gamesmanships and rehydration clauses and things like that, simply put, he can get the fights that he needs to fight. Names like Callum Smith, who was at least a top 3 guy at super middleweight. He was a champion who won the World Boxing Super Series. I did have David Benavidez and Caleb Plant from the eye test. I thought they were better, but you can't dismiss Callum Smith. Canelo chewed him up, Meanwhile, Terence Crawford, it's hard for me to keep him at the list. He's showing mad separation, and he stopped everyone dead in their tracks at welterweight. But I also liken that to who he's fighting and at the time he's fighting him. No other welterweight has that. There's no one else on the top 5 that really has that, like where they just stopped everyone in that weight class. The closest would be Gervonta Davis, and he even has a guy that didn't go the distance or that went the distance. So fighting the likes of Kell Brook, Mean Machine, and Amir Khan versus Canelo, who just fought a guy with a 7-inch reach advantage. I mean, it's a no-brainer to put Canelo number 1. You look at Crawford the last few years, and you look at Canelo and the names he's fought. He's mixing and fluctuating his weight a bit. He just fought a guy again, a champion that won the World Boxing Super Series. Even though I expected this win and stylistically Canelo should have been favored, is how he dismantled him. So that's Caleb Smith. Before that, Sergey Kovalev. Before that, Danny Jacobs. Rocky Fielding, you know, that wasn't no major fight, but it was his first fight at 168, and it was to christen the new deal with DAZN. So I'm not really tripping off that, you know. It is just what it is. It was the new deal. He had to get his feet wet. And then before that, it's 2 Golovkin fights, Chavez Jr. I mean, that's since 2017, you know. So 2017, he's at a steady diet of Chavez Jr. And look, before that, he fought Amir Khan, even though he had no business at that weight class and shattered his jaw. Crawford fought him after that. So how could Crawford remain with these names that Canelo has fought since 2017? But if you look at Crawford, you know, if you take a deep dive and look at who he's fought since around that time, you know, it's John Molina, Felix Diaz, Julius Ndongo, Jeff Horn, who really didn't beat Pacquiao, Jose Benavidez, who had 2 tune-up light fights and was shot in the leg, Amir Khan after Canelo decimated his jaw, Mean Machine, and then Kell Brook 3 years after Errol Spence and 4 years after Golovkin shattered his eye. You know, I can't keep Crawford there because the progression of the rest of the division continues to grow versus Crawford's resume. Like at the time when Teddy Atlas was saying this BS, that's when I had Crawford from that point, you know, right after Andre Ward retired up until recently. That's when I decided to move Canelo to that #1 spot. Canelo got to be the it guy right now. He got to be the it guy right there. You know, look at this height. Like, I mean, who has Crawford fought that had a crazy, he looked bigger than Eddie Hearn almost. You know what I'm saying? And it's not just about being big. This was a champion. He retained his title, even though I don't agree with that in the John Ryder fight. It is what it is. And, you know, Canelo turned him to chop suey. Crawford had a really tough fight with Mean Machine where he was losing early rounds. You know, is Mean Machine leagues above with, look at his record, 21-0, and he was coming off the Ray Robinson fight, which was a draw that he really lost. Look, right before Terence Crawford, he fought Ray Robinson earlier, you know, that year. And it was a draw. That's what they said it was. But realistically, he should have lost that fight. They had a majority decision draw. So based on recent performances, I got to put Canelo above Crawford. It's just my thoughts. You know, Teddy Atlas, he's now changing and saying Crawford stays. But this is also a man who said that Crawford and Andre Ward were behind the 9-1 Lomachenko. So you guys could believe whatever you want. I'm leaving Canelo and appointing him at the #1 spot until otherwise proven. You know, with that comes responsibility. I do want to see a big fight with Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, David Benavidez, Caleb Plant, or somebody like that. You know, being the pound for pound comes with responsibilities. So I don't know. I don't know what ESPN is doing. You know, they wrote articles like Canelo dominates and Caleb Smith in unanimous decision, but then they won't put Canelo as #1 pound for pound. It's kind of ridiculous if you think about it. But I never really had too much faith in the ESPN pound for pound list anyway. Crawford is the ESPN fighter, so they're probably just showing the bias. Me, for what it's worth, I'm putting Canelo #1 pound for pound. Hate it or love it. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know how I did in this video. Also, use the ESPN link to get their app. It does help the channel continue to grow. ESPN Plus is $5.99 a month, or you can get the bundle ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus, all 3 apps for one low price of $12.99. And they just released a bunch of shows on Disney Plus. The Mandalorian is back. They got some upcoming shows as well, so you might want to holler at that. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Is Canelo #1? For what it's worth, I have him over Terence Crawford. I've said that. I made a video, went live. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more sports. Get unlimited access to premium content with an ESPN Plus subscription. ESPN Plus offers a variety of content, including specials, behind the scenes docuseries like Bruce Lee's Be Water, and much more. With an ESPN Plus subscription, you get access to a ton of classic archive fights and replays from boxing and the UFC. Big names like, "Hi, I'm Mike Tyson. Come and watch my fight." Floyd Mayweather, "Easy work. I'm rich." And Manny Pacquiao, "Yes, it's up to my promoter. Just to name a few. If that's not enough, you could get the ESPN bundle, which includes ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus. All 3 apps, one low price. You don't want to miss out. Make sure you guys click that link in the description box of all of my videos. Ego, signing off. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxingego, the future of boxing.